Nine Souls is a very impressive Metroidvania with some beautiful graphics and a great story, but you're going to have to work for it if you want to see it all. The game stars Yi, a member of a council for a species known as the Solarians, who after fleeing their planet due to a massive plague, are trying to keep the remaining people alive in kind of like a state of hibernation. But in order to keep their spaceship going and their people kind of fed, they have taken root in a solar system with a mysterious blue planet that has a bunch of ape men on it. But when the realizations come to roost, Yi is betrayed by the council, and he decides to take his revenge by, well, jumping, slashing, and parrying his way across the spaceship. Nine Souls is a combat-centric Metroidvania. While yes, you will be getting your standard Metroidvania movement tech upgrades, this game has a heavy focus on combat. How this works is that Yi can parry almost any normal attack, and you get up to kind of 3 different kinds of parry moves over the course of playing. Every time you either correctly parry or kind of parry, you'll build up a talisman charge. That is the kind of meter or circles below your health bar. With these charges, you can use your talisman to deliver massive damage to the enemy. The more charges you use, the more damage you do. And this becomes a major part of fighting some of the more advanced enemies later in the game. As things go on, the other 2 kinds of defenses you get, one is a jump parry that's kind of used similar to that in Sekiro, and then you get kind of a charge parry, and that's kind of like your super defense. It will block unblockable attacks. But of course, it comes with the risk that if you fail it, you're taking a super heavy attack rather than a normal one. This is also a game where you have no iframes on hit, and you can and will get stun locked by groups of enemies. Our structure here is that Yi will go into a different part of the ship, fight one of the other souls to get their kind of seal or like talisman that will allow him access to kind of the main computer of the ship. But of course, there will be realizations and a very dark story. And yes, this game can get very dark in terms of the story and depictions. Now with that said, the aesthetics and art style are beautiful. There are just some jaw-droppingly beautiful scenes and imagery that show up in this game. And I like the comic book style cutscenes as a way of kind of, I guess, splitting things up and giving a little bit more flair during some of these fights. Now, the game comes with 2 difficulty settings. You have kind of story mode and normal mode, but normal mode could also be easily confused for hard mode, as this game can get quite difficult. Enemies hit very hard, even with just their normal, non-unparryable attacks. And you do not get any kind of defensive upgrades in this game or being able to damage mitigate. Your sole kind of upgrades will be to increase your health bar, your kind of pipe / Estus, and the number of talismans you get access to that you can charge for attacks. In terms of improving your damage output, there are Tau fruits that you can pick up and are hidden that will increase both slashing and talisman damage, and your passive tree does have a few damage upgrade perks on it, but still nothing that will increase your defensive side. You do have a passive system similar to that of Hollow Knight and other Metroidvanias, in the form of equipping CPU chips, and this will allow you to find your build, and the chips themselves are very varied, and again, this being more combat-centric means that you're going to have different ways of building Yi to make combat work for you. One of the best chips allows you to basically do damage to an enemy every time you perfect parry them. And that's going to come into play as this game features a lot of bosses and mini-bosses. And this is where this game can get very difficult for players. Because of the kind of focus on parrying, if you do not learn the system, or more importantly the timing for parrying, you are going to be in for a world of hurt. You see, the game itself does not use a lot of audio tells for enemy attacks. You have to go by both learning the visual cues as well as the timings for it. And again, Every enemy and every boss has their own unique timings and animations you will have to follow. One thing that I wasn't a fan of with the combat is that Yi's kind of standard parry, he only does it in the direction he's facing. So if the enemy attacks from behind and you parry, it still counts as a hit. This doesn't sound so bad on paper, but when you get further in this game, enemies become faster, they start teleporting around, and it can lead to a lot of just free damage on you just because you weren't facing the right direction because the enemy warped. And with that difficulty, you are going to have a lot of sections where it can become quite frustrating to play. As I said earlier, there's no iframes on hit, and enemies tend to kind of clump together, especially during some of the arena fights. Now there is a CPU upgrade, or a CPU chip, that will allow your talisman to hit multiple enemies, and I highly recommend you get that for those arena fights. It will make your life a lot easier, and this game definitely is balanced under the assumption that you're making use of everything, including your passive skill tree, the CPU chips, and all those lovely upgrades, including getting more arrows, which your arrows in this game are very powerful. One other complaint that I have that is kind of minor but can come back to hurt you is with the quest system. There's no journal or quest markers to kind of give the player an idea of where they need to go or where additional events are, and this can become quite frustrating if you put the game down or come back to it after a few days and you have no idea where you should be going. This game follows very much in the kind of open-ish style progression of a Metroidvania, where one upgrade you get in one area, the next area could be on the complete opposite end of the map. That is where you're supposed to go next. And the game uses some markers for some major events, and I'm surprised they just didn't have this as a universal system for both the side quests and for just general kind of guidance for the player. The only other issue that I have with this game, at least from a quality of life standpoint, is that I'm not a fan of the fast travel / event system. The game features your kind of central hub in the pavilion, and then there's kind of save points or / bonfires in each one of the major areas. You cannot just warp from one area to another. You must always go back to the central pavilion. And this is done because the game uses an event system to trigger story queues and side quests. Every time you return to the pavilion, the game will kind of check to see if there's a side quest or a mini event ready, and then it will play that. This is very important because if you want the true ending and to see everything, you need all these events to go through. But it can become a little bit time consuming each and every time you want to explore somewhere that you have to return there, wait for loading, and then take another warp. And I think I would have preferred if it would just let you know when there's a major event from the pavilion, rather than you having to just being forced to check it each and every time. The overall difficulty of this game also gets very spiky. If you've only played like an hour or two of Nine Souls, you're probably thinking what the heck I'm talking about. But the game from kind of like the back half until the very end gets quite difficult. This is when bosses start getting multiple phases, multiple dangerous phases. And these boss fights are all random pattern fights. So you can get a bad pattern where the enemy will just keep using its strongest or more annoying attacks and will wreck your health bar, especially as evident by the game's final boss, which I'm going to be showing footage of it just to prove that I was able to beat it, but that's not even the real final boss. There's a true version of this fight that we did do on stream, and that was challenging to say the least. But again, Nine Souls is a game much like Sekiro and other combat-focused games where it's all about getting good and mastering that parry timing or the defensive actions. If you do that, you will be able to beat this game very easily. If you don't, or you can't learn that, then there really isn't much else for you to do other than to lower the game civilly down and kind of get through it that way. All in all, I really enjoy this game from a storytelling perspective, from a art and aesthetics, and again from a gameplay. Definitely one of the better Metroidvanias we've seen this year, and definitely going to be on my kind of favorites list as well. So if you like your Metroidvanias with a lot of challenge and a lot of combat to go with it, then it is an easy recommendation from me. I would like to thank the developers for giving me a press key to check this one out. If you'd like me to play your game for a future stream and video, please get in touch. It doesn't have to be Metroidvania related, it can be anything. Thanks again for watching, and see everyone in the next video. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and if you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.